Aaron Stelle with West and How to Be Stellar. And I'm really excited today to be joined by Blake Ellis with Windermere Realty Trust, who is really the foremost resale expert in the Pearl and with condos. Like, he knows high-rise buildings better than anyone I've ever met. So first off, thanks for joining, Blake.
Thanks for having me.
So, first off, obviously condos are a little bit different in regards to, transactions, but also just the style of living. Like, what's it been like living in the Pearl and dealing with all of the, the density and high rises and rules and things?
So I live and work in the neighborhood that I service, and it's been an adjustment. We're used to freely flowing and interacting with our neighbors, and a lot of these buildings have big common areas that we actually do use, and so we've had to find creative ways to both administer our buildings. HOA meetings are on Zoom calls like this, and other HOA leaders of buildings are having neighborhood-wide meetings on Zoom calls like this. And also just kind of sitting and waiting and being respectful of our neighbors as real estate practitioners. A lot of us really, even though we had clients willing to transact during all of this, we all realized that it was really important to do our work to flatten the curve as we got into this. And so we really all did legitimately lock down. And now we're in June, and it's starting to thaw out, and that the business that would have been coming on the last few months is kind of coming to market now. So it seems like all at once, but it's the pent up seller demand.
Yeah, so we were chatting a little bit offline, and you kind of went through how different buildings have different rules. Like, what are the kind of standard things, like, as stuff does start to reopen, that people should be ready for if they're trying to come visit their friends, or potentially even wanting to look and tour properties or see what's going on as far as amenities go with the buildings? Like, what can you expect?
The main thing is facial coverings are just expect to wear one, and whether you personally agree with wearing one or not, the buildings are requiring it. And so that's the basic one. So for showings, everybody's always been masked. And then depending on the building, there's specific rules because of the requirement for, or the recommendation for social distancing. Elevators are tight spaces. So there are different buildings have different rules about that. Some of them are asking that only people who occupy the same unit occupy an elevator car at any given time. So, we might wait a little longer in the lobby to allow that to happen. And then as far as showing practices on the real estate side, I got on a Zoom call a few weeks ago with all the past recipients of the Living Room Realty Sensei Award. And I think there were about 50 of us on that call. And very different people, very different practices. We were 100% on the same page about what the standard of practice needed to be. And it basically boiled down to, regardless of whether you personally agree or disagree, we are going to, be masked. Most of the people on the call were either bringing sanitizer or gloves. WFG for me has provided, booties. Thank you so much. And so we're being as covered as we can, and both in detached and condominiums, trying to make the showings as touch-free as possible. So if it's a seller who's older and immune compromised, we might have them open all the closet doors, open all the patio doors, have all the lights on, maybe open even the cabinet doors on their kitchen, so that they can be assured that the level of touching is as low as it possibly could be. And also just, if you're not doing 3D tours and floor plans at this point, that's something that's really been helpful in reducing the number of unnecessary showings. People can virtually tour spaces now, see room dimensions, and validate something before theoretically putting themselves at, you know, increased risk. And we're all in the point at this point in June, you know, making thoughtful decisions about what risks we're willing and unwilling to take. So.
Well, and I think you made a really good point before. You know, you mentioned 3D tours and floor plans and stuff like that, which you've now been doing for years. But your whole point to it wasn't necessarily like a marketing effort. You're like, I don't want to waste, I don't have the time to waste showing properties that aren't going to be the right property for people. So is that something you think is going to be a bigger focus kind of moving forward?
I mean, I think, you know, until we have a vaccine and there's less risk of second spikes in infection rates, pre-validating buyers by asking if they've seen the virtual tour, even if it's just like, you know, 360 scans instead of a Matterport or something. I think those things are going to be increasingly important for a while. And they really do help. There are things that those tours absolutely can capture that will validate or invalidate somebody's interest in it, whether it's a condominium or it's not. I mean, the Matterport tours are so powerful. You can walk yourself through and zoom in on fixtures and finishes. You can measure ceiling heights, whether you're in the house or you're in San Francisco. I had a San Francisco buyer asked me to go validate ceiling heights in the master bedroom because they were worried that they felt too low, you know? So, you know, the power of that technology is stuff that we should absolutely be leveraging. And considering the amount of time, especially if you're in the luxury space, where you're doing agent accompanied showings, those Matterport tours can save a lot of time and exposure.
So with that, you know, if we're talking about what's going on with condos right now, you know, there's obviously the different tiers as well. You've got everything from, you know, the little teeny tiny studio all the way up to I own a whole floor kind of thing. What's happening with the condo market? And if you want to, like, break it down a little bit into the different quartiles of what you're seeing with your clients.
So because there was so much lockdown down here as we waited, it was pretty quiet for a lot of the, you know, the lockdown so far. Oregon Health Authority only released their per zip code infection rates, you know, pretty recently. If the infection rates for the particular zip code were less than 10, the number reported on the website was reported as 1 through 9. So the Pearl District is, you know, zip code 97209. We were a 1 through 9 zip code. So despite being the highest density, you know, neighborhood in Portland, we had, you know, very few cases of the infection in the neighborhood. But we still, like I said, the practitioners who sell a lot down here and their clients were saying, let's be good neighbors to each other and do our work to make sure that we don't prolong the flattening of the curve you know, into more and more months. So, you know, the actual closed transactions for the last 30 days, usually in the Pearl District, we'll pull through somewhere between 25 and 40 units per month. In the last 30 days, there were 11 closed transactions. But if you look at what's now pended, we have 24. So that's a normal month. So the stuff that's in the pipeline is completely in line with what we used to be doing before the lockdowns happened. I think the listing activity is increasing a little more rapidly than we would usually see. The last 2 years, it's been kind of a slow and steady pace for new listings coming on the market. Now we have there is still a fair amount of new construction being sold out from the Vista building. A total of 161 active listings in the market right now, which is definitely higher than what we've seen before. But it's also something that the buyers going into this needed to have. A huge concern that brokers in the neighborhood were expressing in Q1 was we have nothing to sell. And so now buyer demand is back. People kind of understand the regulations for how to safely show, and sellers are finally feeling comfortable allowing their properties to be accessed, exposed, shown, sold. So
that's great. And so, you obviously, it's probably what, 80% of your business or something like that is condos, but you do sell some, some single family homes and things like that too. Like, what are you seeing as far as like comparison? Like what's happening with condos that's not happening with single family and like vice versa?
So the single family detached market was on fire in Q1, and that did not change at all during any of this. Our job of reverse engineering client goals changed because we had to decide how are we going to show? Are we going to do virtual open houses? Are we wearing masks? Are we bringing our own sanitizer? Are we giving people gloves? Are we putting gloves at our listings, booties, all that stuff? But we adjusted quickly, and this industry hasn't historically been one that adjusts quickly. And I'm honestly really impressed with what people have done. So those houses have gone, at the same pace that they did before. Condos are catching up because we really did lock down for a long time. And so that, that's a little void in the market inventory wise that's needing to be made up now. And things are, coming on faster than they did before.
So what, you had mentioned earlier that you actually have several listings coming online. From like a price point standpoint, like what are the ones that are moving quickly? What's the stuff that's sort of languishing a little bit? And what's just kind of been like, nope, we're just good, status quo, it's gone.
So a lot of that also depends on, there have been some changing tides and buyer preferences in the neighborhood that have been taking place over the last couple of years. I think adding the fact that we've been locked in our homes the last few months has changed those preferences maybe even more. So, the delineation of space is really important. People are starting to value serene views or views, the security of a view corridor, outdoor spaces, even if they were tiny. Those things are becoming even more valuable than maybe they were before. Price point wise, the spread of stuff that's sold in the last month, the most expensive transaction was about 1.3, and the least expensive was 279. And there, a little bit of everything in between. Everything that I have 9 listings on the market right now. All of them are condos, and everything has been shown in the last week. In Q1, I honestly couldn't have said the same thing. And the price range spread is 229 to 2 million. So every single one of those listings has been shown at least once in the last week. So there are definitely people out there, and one of the most expensive of those listings got an offer last night. So, and whether it comes together or not, TBD, but there are definitely people out there they're actively looking. I've seen a lot of my listings are agent accompanied showings. And so I'm seeing the same agents and their clients that are really pounding the pavement to find the place that's right.
That's awesome. And I'm glad to hear that, obviously across the board things are happening. But more importantly, just the activity kind of getting up and figuring out, the way to navigate everything. So, along those lines, like I'll get you out of here because I know your time's valuable and you have a lot going on. So one of the things I really like to do is I like to ask, if you had one piece of advice out there right now, and how can agents, work, and what can people do to really thrive in the condo world?
So, I think just in the end, what we're seeing is real estate 101 is really important. When we don't have the ability to sit in front of our clients, your messaging to those people who are, your most important clients and referral sources, it's super important. And so however that is for you, whether you're, great at texting or you're great at, actually doing FaceTime calls or you do Zoom happy hours or whatever it is, it all boils down to, we all have a need for connection. And the real estate industry is one that's always facilitated those connections. Even though it's business, we're connecting people into different chapters of their lives. And that's not changed. I mean, that piece hasn't changed, but how we do it has changed. And so, you know, just being consistent with still being in front of those people, even if the method that you're doing it has changed, is more important now than ever. And I think also educating yourself about, you know, the coronavirus and its transmission, and how, you know, how you can take practical measures that really aren't that hard to do to ensure the safety of your clients and yourself, as you're going out there and doing the business of real estate every day, is really important. And whether you agree with it or not, is totally fine. But I think as an industry, we need to, you know, be as cautious as we can and be as protective as we can of our clients and ourselves.
Well, Blake, I truly appreciate your time. You know, the thing, we've known each other a long time.
I know, it's been forever.
You're the consummate professional. You literally are the guy that can name every single building, standard finishes, what's going on, probably even people on the boards. Like, you are a wealth of knowledge, and thank you so much for taking the time to share with me.
It's my pleasure.
All right, buddy. We'll talk to you later.
Thanks.